Often when you think of polymer clay, you think of jewelry, but there are so many other things you can make and decorate with it. Today I'm going to show you how to make a set of fun wind chimes using supplies from the Butterfly Bounty Create Along box. Hi there, Sandy Huntress here for Create Along. So before we begin, you should know there are four main parts to a wind chime. There is the top ring or the suspension plate, there are the tubes, there's the clapper, and then there's the sail. I've also heard it called the wind catcher because that's what it does. It catches the wind so it can make things move. So the tubes you can purchase on Amazon. A set of 60 will cost you under $10, which with my method is enough to make 6 wind chimes, or you could use half as many and make 12 wind chimes. For my suspension plate top ring, I am using a little dish. You've probably seen the like at the dollar store or Walmart with office supplies in it for around $1. We'll be making our clapper out of polymer clay, and then these are going to be our wind catcher or the sail, which of course that's what a sail is. It's a wind catcher. 4 different shapes of these butterfly ornaments come in your Butterfly Bounty Create Along box. What you want to do is paint them. First, you want to add a primer, especially if you're going to leave this outside. Add a primer and then add a couple thin coats of acrylic paint. If you don't add the primer, it will probably peel. If you add the primer, it will last a little bit longer. Next, you can choose any colors you wish. I just chose 3 colors here that I like. These are both Cernet Metallics in violet and blue, and this is Primo Sculpey White. You can also use pearl. You can use any colors you want. I have here about a 1-inch ball of each. And what I'm going to do is roll each one into a log. Once you have your logs of clay rolled out, just stack them up and start to twist them together. I'm basically just making a blend of kind of a blended strip to decorate, but you could certainly use anything you have. You can use leftover sheets that you have in your stash, anything you want. This is just a quick way to do it. Once you have that rolled out, go ahead and flatten it a bit and then send it through your pasta machine on a number 1 setting, the thickest setting. Or you can roll it out to about 2.5 millimeters thick. Yeah, rolled into such a wonky shape. Then keep sending it through the pasta machine, folding it in half like I just did with the stripes going in the same way, sending it into the pasta machine, fold first, until it is slightly blended. 5 to 7 times is what I like. Here it is after 7 passes through the pasta machine. I just like the way the colors are blending. You can skip this step if you want, but I like to add just a little bit of interest to it. So I am going to create a pattern with a needle tool. This is an awl. Run the tool across the stripes in one direction, then flip it and run them in the other direction. I'm going to send this whole thing through my pasta machine on a slightly thinner setting, about 1.5 millimeters, a number 3. And you can see it just kind of added an interesting pattern. I'm going to do this one more time. I want it just a little bit more blended. So I'm going to fold it again the short way, send it through, again, fold first. Pick the side that you like best. And use a ruler to just mark a 1-inch strip. You should have about 10 inches. If you're using a shape like this, which is 3 inches in diameter, 10 inches will be plenty to go around and give you a little bit of extra for trimming. So I just marked it. I didn't cut it yet. In your Butterfly Bounty box comes this set of 3 butterfly deco stamps. I love that they put a little handle on here so you can press it in well and then pull it out. Now these 2 are a little wide, so I'm just going to use this one and I'm going to add a tiny spritz. That's probably 5 times more than I need. A tiny spritz of Armor All. You actually could come back in and wipe most of it off. You just need a thin film and then press your butterflies in nice and deep. And this handle makes it so easy to just pull out. And it also fits back in easily if you didn't do a good job. And for my 3-inch diameter piece, I will get 6 butterflies around. I only have 5. I will do the 6th one once I have it wrapped on because it will be on the overlap. So now I can put my ruler back on and trim. And we do it in this order because otherwise the strip gets distorted when you press in the texture. That clay that you press away has to go somewhere, and it makes your strip not quite even. So cutting it after pressing the texture helps you have a nice straight strip. I'm just going to cut one end straight. I'm going to lift this up. Now remember, the open end is going to be down, so if you have something that you want facing up, it'll be facing the solid part, or what would be the bottom. And I'm going to center this. I'm leaving it centered and not filling this whole space because I'm going to use the holes in this to add my wind chimes. We'll just meet those ends as neatly as possible. Use a piece of paper if you need to, and kind of burnish to smooth that seam. Don't press too hard because you can see the distortion you get. And I'm just going to use my blade to kind of straighten that. And it's up to you if you want to try to fit in one more butterfly on the back across that seam or not. Oh, not that one. This one, the skinnier one. I think in this case I may pass on that. That is just going to be the back. You can come in with your blade and use the side that's not sharp to kind of come in and just straighten out any wonkiness in that edge. All right, we'll set that aside. Next, we'll turn our attention to the wind catcher or the sail, and we're going to use this set of butterfly wing press and cut. I think this is so clever. It's a texture plate that fits inside a cutter, so you can cut and press. So I think that's just the coolest thing. The trick here for getting a nice shape is that you want to first press, and this should already have a release on it. So we're going to press nice and deep. Then come in with the cutter and cut. And then we'll do the opposite side. And they also thought that of getting it out, and they made a little handle on these as well, which is very useful. And you keep going. You're going to need 8 of these, 4 for the front and 4 for the back. Once you have your 8 wings, you can start to arrange them on your butterfly, but of course you can only put them on one side at a time. So I have a little trick to save you the trouble of having to do 2 bakes. Grab yourself a tile, like a 4-inch tile is perfect, and a fine point Sharpie, and just trace right onto the tile with the marker. There we go. Now you can arrange one set on the wood and one set on the tile. And arrange them however you like. You can change the shape, you can sculpt it and mold it. This is pretty good as far as I'm concerned. That's great. I don't want to cover the wooden pieces entirely because the problem with that is that wood tends to expand and contract and can cause cracking and issues. After baking, most likely the clay will release from the painted wood, and then you can just glue it down with E6000, and of course the other side you can glue down as well. Now I have something fun for the butterfly body. This is a face mold. I've just got some scraps of my clay. I rolled it into a smooth ball, make sure there's no cracks. And I'm going to press it into my mold. Let me fill that a little better. You want to kind of overfill it, and then you can trim it perfectly flush with a blade. And this clay is very soft. It's very hot and humid here today, so you may want to just kind of push it back into place and roll it out. You could absolutely put your little face down like that. That's kind of cute. Or you can shape it. You can stretch it and shape it a little bit. I think this one I'm going to leave round. But if you take a peek at this one I did earlier, I pinched out the antennae and kind of sculpted it into a slightly different shape. Here's my second face. I'm just going to pop that on there. And now these are ready to cure. Just a couple more things before we cure everything. You need a clapper, something to clang or a clanger or a striker. And you can do that with just some scraps of clay. Maybe like a 3/4 inch ball. If you have a piece of metal around 2 inches in diameter that you can pierce a hole in the middle and hang that, that's fantastic. But clay works fine too. To flatten it out, I just have an acrylic block. And I'm just gonna flatten it till it's around 2 inches in diameter. And you can poke a hole now, or you can drill a hole with a drill after baking. I'm just gonna put this on a piece of paper. There's just a couple more things that you want. And all will easily punch a hole in this so that you can hang it. However, it's very difficult to smooth out the rough edges on the inside. So what I suggest you do is make a couple of little clay washers. Also, I found some of the paint on this wanted to chip off after I punched the hole, just because of the pressure and bending the metal. So roll a couple little balls, one for the top and one for the inside. So the one on the top will cover any paint that got messed up, and the one on the inside, importantly, will protect your string from fraying because of the rough edges of the hole. So that's all that's left of those 3 1-inch balls of clay. And what we have are 2 sides for our wind catcher, a clapper, 2 washers, and then the decorated top plate. You want to put these all in the oven and bake them. I would give them an hour at the manufacturer's recommended temperature. Here are my pieces after baking. You'll want to just kind of peel up at least the wings of the one that you put on the wood, and then use some E6000 glue to glue it down and make sure it's secured. The one on the tile will pop right off, and you'll be able to use the same E6000 and glue that to the other side of the sail or the wind catcher. Use a drill bit and drill a hole in the center of these 3 round pieces. If you like, you can take some more of that white acrylic paint and fill in, just paint in the deep spots in the sail and the top plate. Let it dry just until it's no longer shiny, and then just use a damp towel and wipe away the excess, and it gives a really nice look. Or if you prefer, you can just skip that step and leave it the way it is. You'll also want to drill a hole in the top center of the butterfly so that you can hang it, and just a simple handheld drill bit does the trick. It's soft wood, it drills very, very easily. The set of chimes I got from Amazon comes with 5 different sizes, so I am going to use 2 of each size to make my wind chimes. You could just use 5. I just like the way it fills out the circle having 10. However many you have to divide a circle into that number of parts. So a circle is 360 degrees, and divided into 10 parts, that means each section is 36 degrees. And I used a ruler and a protractor, and it's just these measurements. You just mark around, draw your circle, use a ruler to connect the lines. And if you need to draw a smaller circle in the middle, you can just set a compass to a little bit bigger than the radius of your container, and draw another circle that's closer. This makes a marking template. And what I use to mark this is just a bit of whiteout. this will scratch right off the container once I'm done with it. So I just put a little dot there, and I just put one on each spot going around, marking off my 10 segments. I'm not worried about them being absolutely precise. I just want them evenly spaced around. Once you're done using the marking template to mark your spacing for your tubes, cut the center out just so it's just, maybe I could have cut this a little smaller, just the size of the top of your container, because we need to punch a hole in the middle for it to hang. And I prefer it to be as centered as possible so it will hang straight. And I have here just an awl, and this works great, and a hammer. And I'm just going to give it a single whack, and that'll do it. And there is my hole. As I mentioned, this is sharp, and that's why we made these little clay discs to go on either side. On this one, the paint didn't chip, but on my other one it did, and that's why I made this disc for the top. Now you can start stringing your tubes onto here. This is just the nylon that came with the tubes. You could use anything you have. And I'm cutting nice long pieces. I'm not trying to preserve this at all. I think when I'm done I'm going to throw the rest of it out because it's kind of annoying to deal with. So it goes through the holes in the tube, then just into the closest hole to one of your marks. And what you want is to hang these all at pretty much the same distance from the bottom of the container. So what you do is gather the two ends together, make an overhand knot, then you just put something in there, the distance that you want. What's really useful is to get yourself a spacer. This is just a business card of mine, and this is a good distance. It's around 1.5 inches or so. So I'm just going to use that as a spacer, and I have a needle. So the needle goes into the loop of the knot, and I'm going to pull, and that positions it exactly where I want it. And then I can slide out my spacer, trim the thread. You can either tuck the knot inside the tube or just put it inside the top of the container. And carry on adding just your tubes all the way around. And notice the whiteout just scratches right off and it's all gone. So there, I've added all of my chimes. Now we can just add the centerpiece, the center dangle. So first cut 1.5 yards, about 45 inches of your nylon, and string that through your sail, your wind catcher, and center this on the nylon. So from this point on, we'll have 2 strands going all the way up through the piece. So just bring your 2 ends together and tie a little knot right there, right above. You don't have to make these things tight. In fact, you kind of want to leave them loose, so you can just leave a little space. It just helps secure it. And again, that trick with the needle is very helpful for getting things, knots, exactly where you want them to be. So there. Now you can skip adding beads and such if you want. You don't have to, but I think they look nice. You could actually fill the entire center dangle with beads if you want. Or you can skip them all together, or you can use just a few. I just have here a little daisy spacer and a crystal, and those are going to go over both of the strands of nylon. So for this size wind chime, and by the way, the longest tube is 4.5 inches and the shortest is about 2 3/4. I did a little experimenting. Actually, I did a little redoing. And I found it looks nicest if you put 4 inches from if you put the clapper about 4 inches from your main piece, your sail. So 4 inches from that piece, we're going to make a triple knot. Just exactly the same. You make a loop and then pull the ends through, and I'm just laying this on the ruler. Got my needle right where I want that knot to live. And now I'm going to repeat that 2 more times, making knots over that knot. And I'm doing it this way because if it's smaller than that, my beads slip through. So there's 2, and 1 more time. And you just make sure that knot's in the loop and it will all land right on top of each other. Now you can add your clapper. In this case, I'm going to add a daisy spacer and a crystal on either side of the clapper. So here's my clapper assembly. Again, you could skip the crystals. You could fill this whole thing with crystals, in which case you wouldn't need the knots to hold things in place. You would just make sure to position that about 4 inches from the sail. All right, now 9 inches from the top of the sail, you're going to do that whole triple knot thing again. I found it helpful at this point to mark that with a Sharpie. So now we have another triple knot 9 inches from the top of the sail, and you can slide on one of your clay washers. There's that. Then slide those 2 ends up through the inside of your top ring. That hole that you punched right there. Now once you've done that, you can see that that washer sits right up there and will prevent that hole, the sharp edges, from cutting your nylon. On the top side, add your other washer and then whatever you want for decorative crystals and spacers. So there's that. And your very last step before hanging it outside and enjoying it is to make a loop for hanging here. And this is why we cut a really long piece of nylon, because it's so much easier to just have it long and make the knot. So I've got, maybe a 5 or 6 inch loop just doubled over here on itself. And I'm just going to tie that whole bundle in an overhand knot. Now you can see I got curly cues in my nylon here because I think I stretched it. So try not to do that because it makes it kind of difficult to manage. Trim your excess cord and hang it outside and enjoy the sweet tinkling in the wind.